Meeting of the House Elections, Constitutional Amendments, and Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, and it's called to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Bauman,
Present.
Representative Branscombe,
Here.
Representative Camuel,
Here.
Representative Decker, Representative Gooch, Representative Herron, Representative Hodgson, Representative Imes,
Present.
Representative Cook, Representative Lewis,
Here.
Representative Lockett,
Here.
Representative Moser,
I'm here.
Representative Raymond, Representative Callaway,
Here.
Representative Bratcher.
Here, and everybody please turn their cell phone to mute. We don't want those going off, and we'll recognize special guests, and the chair has a special guest, my old friend, and he was a state rep for 100 years, Bob Hellringer. And Bob, I'm going to let you introduce your folks, if you don't mind. Yes, sir.
Oldest daughter, his mother, Sarah. Sarah, you want to stand up? Sarah was born my first term. So, very pleased to have her. She's a school.
Okay, well, thank you guys. Let's give them a round of. Thank you and welcome, guys, and hope that you have a good day of watching this. To a lot of people, it's as boring as watching paint dry, and then there's some people that really love this. So it's not for everybody, but it is a great thing, and it's a great way we operate our state and our country. Anybody else have guests they'd like to recognize? Okay, the first item up is House Bill 44 by Representative Hodgson. Introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Hodgson, State Representative, District 36 in Jefferson County. I have with me here two guests who will introduce themselves.
Karen Sellers, Executive Director of the State Board of Elections.
Jennifer Sketchfield, Assistant Secretary of State.
Okay, if this bill looks familiar to you, it's because it is. You've seen it in interim joint committee at least once. House Bill 44, in fact, you voted on the House floor last year with about 77 positive votes. But the bottom line here is this bill would require the Secretary of State to work in tandem with the Board of Elections to have a comprehensive report presented to the public and to this committee every year about voter roll cleanup activities. That's an issue of importance to the public here lately, and this is activities that we're doing already, but it would enhance the communication and cooperation of those activities. You may recall in 2018, Kentucky was subject to a federal consent decree due to its failure to clean up the voter roll information. And in fact, up until the beginning of last year, I think the state of Kentucky had more registered voters than living human beings over the age of 18. And thankfully, we're now below that line due to the diligent cleanup efforts of a lot of folks, but we still need to get better. Heritage ranks us as about number 14 in the United States in terms of voter roll cleanup. This bill and the other bill I'll present may help us move up a couple of notches in that, but our voter rolls and our voter laws have improved greatly in the last 3 or 4 years. So this is really a transparency bill. It'll do a couple of things. One of them is that if someone is unable to serve jury duty because they're not a United States citizen, that'll be reported back to the Board of Elections so that those persons will be removed. Second thing is the two agencies represented here will jointly present to this committee a comprehensive report on their cleanup activities for the prior year and make that available to the public for full disclosure. Third, it will limit the ability of Kentucky to enter into a contract after our consent decree expires with an outside agency that requires us to spend public funds to register unregistered voters. And that's a contract that you may be familiar with now that we're involved in with Eric. And so that takes that time limit out past the expiration of our current consent decree. Fourth, it will cause the Board of Elections to generate a data-based report that will list every address in each county, how many registered voters and inactive voters are at that address, so that a citizen can go check their own address, make sure that the right number of people are there, and if they find an anomaly, there will be an online form at both the Secretary of State and Board of Elections websites where they can report that for future investigation. And that is the crux of it. And
Okay,
sorry.
we have a committee sub that,
You're absolutely right. Thank you.
all right, we have the committee sub to House Bill 44 before us. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, now we have the House Bill 44 in front of us as amended by the House Committee substitute, right? Yep. Okay, do we have anybody else at the table want anything to say or any questions amongst the leadership? We have Representative Herron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a couple of questions for you regarding this bill. The first question I have, has there been any documented incidences in Kentucky where non-citizens has reported for jury duty?
I haven't had a report of that from the Administrative Office of the Courts. No.
So currently we don't think that it's an issue?
I believe that just what is in the bill to do that, I believe that is an appropriate action from the administrative law or the administrative courts to submit that to the State Board of Elections. Right now, the law would allow us to go ahead and remove that person if we get the information from the court.
It's really compelling
Yes,
communication between two agencies of government.
Right. It's just a communication directly to the State Board of Elections from the administrative courts.
May I ask another question? So if, for instance, if there's a non-citizen who is currently a green card holder, would this process jeopardize their ability to register as a voter if they were to gain citizenship?
I'm not sure if I understand, but a green card holder is not a U.S. naturalized citizen.
Correct,
They
but
would
if they
have
go
to-
through that process to gain citizenship, if they were reported as someone who was potentially reported to jury duty, would that impact their citizenship, their ability to gain citizenship?
Now that I wouldn't be able to answer. That would be something up to the courts.
It would not, I mean, because you sign an affidavit saying that you have the requirements to be a registered voter. So if the person hadn't been registered before, they wouldn't show up in the voter registration system, so they wouldn't be flagged if they got a jury duty thing, notification. If they then registered after they gained citizenship, it wouldn't be flagged. Does that make sense?
Kind of. I think for me, I'm just confused because I would just think that a non-citizen would not report to jury duty because they're not registered to vote, correct?
There are multiple ways that you can get jury duty. It's not just having a driver's license, which citizens and non-citizens can get driver's license. So it's possible they can be called to jury duty from that or from other avenues.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's a new one on me. So I thought you had to have a driver's license to be on jury. What other ways do they do it? Do you know?
Voter registration, there's multiple ways that you can. I know I have a friend that's still not registered to vote because they think that that's the only way they can get jury duty.
They still do. Right.
Huh, okay. Representative Callaway, Vice Chair.
Yes, thank you for this bill. I just have one question, just to make sure that I was clear. The total amount of people that will be shown is only related in a household is only related to voters in the household, correct?
Correct. It would be just no personal identifying information whatsoever. It would be two numbers, the number of active voters and the number of inactive registered voters.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Branscombe.
Thank you, Chairman. Quick question. This is probably for Karen and Jenny. What would be the process when we come across anomalies in, let's say, the number of registered voters in the household?
This is something we looked at in 2020 because obviously voting was very different in 2020. We actually did these reports where we could see there were X amount of absentee ballots requested from a particular address. What we did discover in most of those, it was nursing homes or group living homes. So we would be able to take a look and understand why it was particularly in that one address.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about anomalies that aren't as noticeable? Let's say my household shows that I have 3 registered voters when I only have 2. How is that addressed?
There are multiple ways we could address it. If there were concerns, we can send it to the AG for investigation. We're not an investigative body, either as the State Board of Elections. In some situations, if you are an overseas or military voter that has retained the ability to vote in Kentucky because you still maintain it as your address, but you no longer have an address, you can register to vote in your last known address. And so some people say this person, but they are registered at your address, but as a military or overseas voter. But we would be able to take a look and understand why those persons are registered at that address.
Thank you, Chairman.
If I may
Yes.
add to your question, one of the things that, the general aim of this is to catch anomalies, but what bothers us are the specifics. And you just asked, how do you address what an anomaly is? SBE doesn't have any authority or investigative authority, per se. I can speak for SBE. But what is a high number of people living in a single family address? And as Jenny said, you do have our military. There could be 5 families registered at a home in Hardin County, but they may have been deployed or moved to another domestic base in another state, but yet they're still registered as a Kentucky resident and is allowed to vote absentee per that. So how do you, define that? And it's not uncommon for a single residence to have more than one, but, it's what is that single family home? What is that high number? Is it 10? Is it 4? And when you would move it to another agency to define what that is. I just am concerned about the definition of high number and single family resident and what is determined, what is an anomaly. And Representative Hodgson and I have spoken about this with Taylor. This isn't anything he didn't understand that we had some concerns about. There's also KRS 116.035 that was passed by this body that allows a commercial location or a vacant lot, a registered registration there. So, how do you determine where that is, an anomaly? What is that definition of anomaly? So we also are concerned about a list that's provided to the public, and then they come back and they say, well, I've reported blah, blah, Court Street in another city. The public believes that we're going to address that. What does that do if we can't address that? If they report it, they assume we're going, well, you should never assume, but they probably will assume that that's going to be addressed. we don't have any ability to address that. And without, some clear definitions on what that is, the concern is, how do you ensure the public believes that what they've reported to us is being addressed and followed up on? And if we don't have that ability to do it, do we lose, that public, the public's awareness and the public's respect for the voter registration system?
Okay. Yeah, and I think the fact that we might discover some anomalies and need some more resources to resolve those is certainly an open issue, but it doesn't change the fact that we need to have full disclosure to the public and start cataloging those anomalies. For instance, when I became a political candidate, I had access to the voter file, and I was able to see that my own 2 children who had moved out of state years before were still registered at my house, even though they were registered in a new state. So I prompted them. I said, you need to go, take some action and get yourself off the voter rolls here. I know Representative Nemus has spoken a couple of times about how there are 3 families registered living in his house, the 2 previous owners. Everybody that's a political candidate or worked in a political campaign knows that those anomalies exist. And this may be step one of many, agreeably, to letting the general public be involved in the process of cleaning up our voter rolls, because it belongs to all of us. And, free, fair, and open elections are the bedrock of our democracy here. So step one, certainly not the end game.
Representative Camuel, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 questions, if
Go
that's
ahead.
okay. Thank you. Getting back to just a question about jury service. Could this be used? Let's see. Could it be punitive to non-citizens, especially if non-citizens reported their ineligibility for jury service to the court?
I believe if they did report their non-citizenship, that would be an excusal from jury duty. And since one public agency is now in possession of that knowledge, we're asking that they communicate that to another public agency so that appropriate action can be taken.
So it could result in punitive action?
I think not if they self-report.
Not if they self-report. Okay, thank you. And then my other question is, the secure link to voluntarily remove someone from the voter rolls, how will you ensure that it's the actual individual doing it and not some bad actor?
Well, it could be any member of the public inquiring. We have discussed, the details of how to deploy those website portals are, yet to be developed. We talked about requiring someone to give their name and their email address prior to gaining access, so we'd make sure that they were not someone else, but it would be open to the public for inspection.
May I ask a follow-up on that? Thank you. I appreciate that answer. I think one of the concerns I know my kids' email addresses, I know their names, I know their social security numbers, and although we all try to do things to keep our identities private and keep it secure, even hearing what you said, that doesn't instill a lot of confidence in me in what this secure link would do. Can you provide additional? We have so many hackers, so many issues.
Sure. There would be absolutely no personal identifying information in there. It would say 123 Main Street, 3 registered voters, 2 inactive voters. The end. Just 3 columns. So absolutely no personal identifying information at all.
All right, thank you.
Representative Cook.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I realize there aren't a lot of large families anymore across the state, but I come from one. So come from a family of 12. And I'm just thinking, like, when my oldest brother Charles was maybe 25 or 26, how many registered voters were maybe, before he had gotten, moved into his own house, how many registered voters were there? So what is the process of, how does that work? So I understand, so they'll be on the report, hey, there's a large number of voters there, because it's going to say, I don't know how many of us would have been at one time, but let's say it's 8. And I'm going to guess that 8 would be considered a high number. Is it just, it's there? Does somebody how do they check that? Does somebody call and say, hey, we got it, it's a mom, dad, it's a couple kids, everything's good, and then that name that comes off of there? Is that all that would happen in this process, or?
Well, if it's your address, you would know how many people should be registered
Right.
there, and you'd be. I don't imagine there's going to be a lot of people looking all over the place for these things. But for instance, if you have a gravel lot across the street from you that's got 20 voters registered at, that might raise a question in your mind. You might
Okay.
report that. So that gives us 4 million eyes and ears out there to report anomalies into the Board of Elections. It doesn't mean any action's going to be taken. Doesn't mean anybody's going to be removed. But it's a measurement. It's an indicator, and it gives us kind of a mechanism to go a little
Starting
further.
point.
Starting
There's no
point.
like, okay, you're not going to be highlighted or
No.
called out or anything.
And the
Okay.
bill specifically says that no one is to be contacted about their voter registration except by mail. So,
Okay.
the
Got
postcard
it.
process
Okay.
that we have.
And I think as we continue to do list maintenance, it will also be eye-opening to see how, because like Representative Nemus, concerned about the two families before, those should show up now as inactive voters.
Okay.
So that they're slated to be removed when the two federal elections have passed. So it should give people more confidence that our list maintenance procedures are working.
Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on this House Bill 44 as amended by the committee substitute. Seeing no more questions, Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Bauman,
Yes.
Representative Branscombe,
Explain my vote.
Yep.
I'm a yes. I think you and I have talked about a couple of things, but I think I like the intent of the bill. I think the process needs to be, looked at a little bit as far as what's an anomaly, but I'm a yes, like the bill. Thank you.
Representative Callaway,
Yes.
Representative Camuel,
May I explain my vote? Thank you. I appreciate the bill and I appreciate everything that you all are doing. Today, I'm a no on this one. I do feel like we have a tendency right now to put more emphasis on removing people from voter rolls than encouraging people to vote. I like the idea of a more participatory democracy where we encourage more people to exercise their right to vote. So this one concerns me a little bit. And just one other piece that does give me pause is in my district, I do have a lot of multi-generational families residing in one place. So we've got grandparents, parents, and adult children as well as grandchildren. And so I'm afraid that this will unintentionally create an issue for some of the families in my district. So I'm a no today, but I appreciate the bill.
Representative Decker,
Yes.
Representative Gooch, Representative Herron,
I explain my vote, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be a no for it today. I do have pause with the portal about the way that would work, the secure link. Just some confusion there. And then I'm still not very clear on if non-citizens report or say that they have been reported and they shouldn't be on jury duty. Would there be implications for them potentially being deported because of that self-reporting? And so there's just a lot of concerns that I have around that. Thank you.
Representative Hodgson,
Yes.
Representative Imes,
Yes.
Representative Cook,
Explain my vote.
Yes.
I'm a yes, because I believe we have to do both. You have to give voters the confidence that their vote counts. Every vote, it's one person, one vote, and you have to give them that confidence. And not only do we have to get out and encourage, I agree, we have to get out and encourage people to vote because our voter turnouts across the state are atrocious. So we've got to encourage that. But one way that you can encourage them to vote is to let them know that none of the illegal voting's happening. So I'm a yes.
Representative Lewis,
Yes.
Representative Lockett,
Yes.
Representative Moser,
Yes.
Representative Raymond,
No.
Representative Bratcher.
Yes. What's the score? Twelve to 3. House Bill 44, as amended by the committee substitute, passes with favorable expression. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Now, we will continue with Representative Hodgson on House Bill 53. Anybody coming to the table besides you?
I think I had somebody representing the Clerks Association.
Okay.
There he
Mr.
is. There's a large gentleman
Secretary
approaching the witness table.
of State. Trey Grayson. And just to remind the committee, we have some important bills coming through in the next few weeks, so please be ready. Okay, the floor is yours. Just introduce yourselves at the table.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Hodgson, State Representative, District 36.
Trey Grayson with Frost Brown Todd and lobbyist for the Clerks Association.
Okay, sir. House Bill 53 is probably familiar with this committee also. We reviewed it at the Interim Joint Committee. We've done a lot of work on this over the last 18 months with the Clerks Association. We presented it in this body for discussion here a couple of weeks ago. So I don't think this will be unfamiliar to you, but for the benefit of those listening, this very simply establishes a back-end hand-to-eye audit of the ballots. On the front end, I've observed this process in the county clerk's office. They go in and certify each machine. They run sample ballots through it. They make sure the machine is scanning correctly and it gives the right outcome. A vendor, a public witness, and a representative of the clerk's office have to sign that certification sheet to certify on the front end. We don't have adequate safeguards on the back end to make sure that that machine was not somehow adulterated or tampered with. This body passed a law to make it a felony to connect one of those machines to the internet, which is a great step, but this is kind of a belt and suspenders to make sure that no one has nefariously gotten into the operating system of that machine, hacked it in any way. So the process would be that after every election cycle, the Secretary of State would take a list from each county of all the serial numbers of the ballot tabulators, randomly select one of those, and then randomly select one race that's been tabulated on that scanner. And then the County Board of Elections would take that information, sit down in a public place with public witnesses, with a election worker from the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. They would break the seal on the box of that tabulator, and they would go in and have a very detailed hand-to-eye count process to validate the number that was reported on the register tape on election night. If you've seen those tapes taped to the door of the polling place that indicate what printed off from the register and it's signed by election workers, we know that's not been changed since election night. So we can do an eyeball recount. If the two match, we know we have checked the tech and the scanner did what it was supposed to do, and we're good. If there's a discrepancy, then there's an investigative process to say, what was this about? Was it just a stray mark that didn't get counted? Or are we off by a significant margin to suggest that maybe there's been tampering with that machine? And if there is a suspicion of that, there's a process to report this situation to the Secretary of State, to the grand jury, as well as the Attorney General. This is not going to be a free process, and in working with the clerks and refining this language over the last 18 months, we think it would cost a maximum of $5,000 per election cycle if they happen to pick the biggest tabulator out there with 5,000 ballots in it. In most cases, it's going to be much less than that, but we are making an appropriation to say the County Board of Elections can apply to the Board of Elections for reimbursement of their actual expenses. At a minimum, it's probably going to be 2 paid poll workers and whatever it costs to rent, a room to do it in. But at the most, it could end up being several.
I'll just add a couple things on behalf of the Clerks Association. One, the clerks do support this bill and appreciate Representative Hodgson's willingness to work through the process. This bill, both as you see in the committee sub, is slightly different, has a lot of technical changes that have evolved to make it work. They're excited about they have the opportunity. He's used the term check the tech. That's really the best way to describe this bill. It's a way to check the tech post-election before certification, and if we find an anomaly, then we can go investigate. Clerks and county boards can't currently do this. They can't break a seal without a court order. So this allows them to do this. They also appreciate the appropriation. Because it's only one per county, in theory, Jefferson County could have a real, it could be it doesn't matter how big, between Jefferson and Robertson, it's one machine per county. And so we think that appropriation should cover the cost of it. And so the clerks support this idea, and we think it's good for confidence in elections, and appreciate his leadership on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Hodgson, thank you for bringing this one forward as well. I was wondering if you could explain what's going to happen if the hand-to-eye count does not match.
So the bill requires that if it does not match, and you've got two people independently counting that should come up with the same number first off, but then if it doesn't match what's on the register tape, the first thing that you go back and look at and say, are there ballots in that pile that had a marking outside of the readable area? You know, the little oval we were all trained in third grade to fill in. Some people, amazingly, will underline a candidate's name, circle a candidate's name, circle the circle, and those are unreadable. So if you find 2 or 3 of those and that's the amount that you're off, that's explainable. If it's 250 votes in the hopper and 270 votes on the machine tally, you've got a big problem. That's going to require further investigation. And this authorizes them to do that additional investigation and report it to the grand jury, report it to the Attorney General, report to the Secretary of State.
And I think the other thing that it does is if you're a candidate and you see something like this happen, it gives you the ability to file for a recount or a contest. And I think that what he describes is really important, because what we're doing is, since we are checking the tech and not checking the math, we are checking the math, but the goal is to check the tech. If there's an overvote or something like this, in a recount, those votes would count.
Right.
Because you would look at the intent of the voter. But for this purpose, we're trying to figure out, did the tech work? Did the machine work as it was programmed? And so we want to look at that. And so it's a great feature built in, because that was one of the first questions the clerks had about, what about an overvote? What about something like that? And the bill envisions that scenario and creates a process to set those aside, because we don't want to waste court's time. We don't want to waste candidates' time on something that's easily explainable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Callaway.
Can you talk a little bit about the risk limiting audit and how this meets that requirement? I know we've had some conversation about it, but just kind of clear that up.
Yes, a few years ago, I was actually involved as a citizen activist getting that risk limiting audit language put in the statute. That has acquired a national definition of the words risk limiting audit. Our hand-eye recount is a very well-established Kentucky precedent. It doesn't necessarily mesh exactly with that national language, so we've actually removed reference to that risk-limiting audit, and this will replace that protocol. But the clerks and I agree that this is a much more understandable, much more easily executed, much more certain way to audit, because instead of sampling a ballot from the top of the stack, the middle of the stack, and the bottom of the stack and getting an approximate answer, you're getting a definite answer. You've counted every single ballot in that tabulation machine. So it's a 100% batch sample, and I believe, at least in our Kentucky situation with smaller precincts, it yields a superior result to what the existing pilot risk limiting audit language does.
And the key thing about this particular bill and the audit that it proposes is it's before the certification. That way we can do something if we find a problem. And so the risk limiting audit, if you want to think about it in the hierarchy, a post-election audit that's before certification is the big description. This is one of those. Risk limiting audit is another type of that. And some of the clerks went through the pilot program. The bill that y'all passed in 2021 included that as a pilot. So in 2022, some counties did it. It was complicated to administer. It was complicated to explain. And one of the features, and the representative said this, and I want to reiterate it, the beauty of this bill, we think, is that it's easy to explain to the voters. One machine, randomly picked, one race in the county, we're going to check the tech. And we hope that voters will understand that. They'll see this result. They'll have confidence in the outcome, even if their candidate didn't win, because there was a check before certification.
Okay, any more questions? We have a motion on the bill as amended. Representative Callaway made the motion and Representative Lockett seconded. Clerk, please call the roll.
Representative Bauman,
Yes.
Representative Branscombe,
Yes.
Representative Callaway,
Yes.
Representative Camuel,
Yes.
Representative Decker,
Yes.
Representative Gooch,
Yes.
Representative Herron,
Yes.
Representative Hodgson,
Yes.
Representative Imes,
Yes.
Representative Cook,
Yes.
Representative Lewis,
Yes.
Representative Lockett,
Yes.
Representative Moser,
Yes.
Representative Raymond, Representative Bradshaw.
Yes. That's 15 15-0, shutout. House Bill 53, as amended by the committee sub, has passed with favorable expression.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks.
And we have a title amendment.
Oh, yeah.
Motion title amendment by Representative Lockett and Branscombe. All those in favor of the title amendment? Aye. Opposed? The title amendment passes. And the committee now, the House Bill 53, as amended by the committee subs, and the title amendment passes with favorable expression. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And we are adjourned.